Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, we're going to be taking a look at a Pokemon deck that just won a tournament in Japan with over 600 people. This is a giant tournament, make no mistake. And the weird thing is, it's Gardevoir Sylveon. That's right. That deck that we all thought was going to be pretty good, and then it's good, and it turned into a bit of a fringe deck, and it's the kind of thing that can get you maybe to a top cut, but it's not going to go and win anything. Oh no, ladies and gentlemen. It might just be the best Pokemon deck we have. So, Gardevoir and Sylveon then. 1 energy. Search your deck for up to 2 fairy energy. Attach them to your bench Pokemon in any way that you like. 3 energy, 150, and move any number of energy from your Pokemon to your other Pokemon in any way you like. Just move them around. And then 3 fairy energy, 200 damage, but if there's 6, your opponent shuffles their hand into their deck. I know, right? Wouldn't it be great if we could do this on turn 1 so that our opponent had nothing? That is basically the premise of this deck. The goal of this deck is to get a turn 1 GX attack. So, I mean, look, if you're going second, your opponent has already had a turn. And if you go first, you can't attack, so you have to let your opponent have a turn. But the goal here is you have 1 turn of your opponent doing what they need to do, and then you make them shuffle their hand into their deck, and then they cannot do anything, and you win. Okay, fine. But how are we supposed to do that again? How are we supposed to get 6 energy on here turn 1? And the answer is Morgan. You see, Morgan is one of these. We saw it used in a Rayquaza deck a little while ago, but it's super awkward and it's hard to use and it doesn't often end up doing that well. But what it does is you can only play it if you've discarded Dana, Evelyn, and Nita from your hand, 3 other supporter cards. You look at the top 12 cards of your deck and attach any number of energy cards you find there to your Pokemon in any way that you like. Well, you're playing 20 energy here. Now, to be fair, 20 energy means 1/3 of your deck is energy, which means with all things being equal, you should expect to hit 4 energy, and you need 6. But you are going to attach 1 from your hands. You only really need to hit 5. But then, of course, you're taking all the supporters out of your deck so you can use this. And you're playing all the Pokemon from your deck. So actually, it's not you should expect to hit 4. We're getting more towards you should expect to hit 5. And then you play 1 from your hand. And oh my goodness, it might actually work, ladies and gentlemen. It might actually work. Now, the 200 damage is great. Yeah, 200 damage is lovely. You'll probably get a KO. But you're not actually worried about the damage. The goal here, very simply, is to get the turn 1 GX attack so that you can force your opponent to have a 0-card hand. And then they've got nothing. Nothing. Now, at this stage, you're probably thinking, well, hang on a second. Okay, fine. If you can pull this off, and you might be able to pull it off, it's going to be difficult, but maybe you can do it. But if you pull it off, what if your opponent top decks something? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's where Chip Ice Axe comes in. You see, this is a little played card, although to be fair, it does actually see play in your earlier lists of Gardevoir and Sylveon. And what you do is you look at the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck. You choose one of them to put on top of their deck and they shuffle the other 2 cards back in. Or to put it another way, you fix their top deck. So you make them shuffle their entire hand into their deck and then you say, hey, you can top deck a basic energy. Or hey, you can top deck a choice band. But whatever it is, it's not going to do you any good and then you're going to lose. This deck is harsh, ladies and gentlemen. This deck is really, really mean. Now, if your opponent doesn't see this coming, you'll probably win in a turn or 2. If they do see it coming, what they essentially have to do is fill their bench full of Pokemon and hope that they can draw out of it before you're in too much of a lead. Because if they don't draw out of it in a turn or two, you're going to be 2, 3, 4 prizes ahead, and even if they draw out of it, it's going to be too late, and you're going to already have won. Now, okay, after the first attack, you're only doing 150, but the great thing here is what you're doing is putting 6 energy on so that you can do the GX attack, but then actually you don't want 6 energy on there anymore, you only need 3. So the first time you use Kaleidostorm, you move 3 energy off from this one to one of your bench, and then you've got 2 Gardevoir and Sylveon already ready to go, already with everything you need in terms of energy. That's pretty ridiculous. If this combo goes off, you're ahead on prizes, your opponent has no hand, you're trying to fix their top deck with Chip Chip Ice Axe, and then you're sitting there with 2 Pokemon ready to go and just hitting 150 a turn. And if you're about to be KO'd, there's nothing to stop you retreating into another Gardevoir and Sylveon, because you can basically make sure you've always got 2 Gardevoir and Sylveon ready to go, because every time you attack, you move the energy around. This is phenomenal. Now, we're looking at this deck slightly differently to how we usually do deck profiles, because instead of just looking at the Pokemon and then the trainers, it's a combo deck. It is, you need the early Morgan. If you don't get the early Morgan, you're probably going to lose. Simple as that. Because if you're against something like Blacephalon, they're just going to take KOs. You're going to be trading against decks that might be able to trade better than you. You're not playing stuff like Fairy Charm to give yourself invincibility like the previous Gardevoir and Sylveon decks did. It is all on the combo. And there are 2 ways that we're using to get supporter cards out here. First of all, we are playing the full 4 TAPU LELE. Because remember, TAPU LELE searches out a supporter card. And fine, you can only play 1 during your turn, but remember, what you really need to do here is get 4 in your hand. You only need to play 1. So you can use Tapu Lele to search them out, and that's lovely. The other thing you can use here is Misty's Wish. The problem is, although that lets you search for free supporters, and that's great, it is your supporter for the turn. You can't play Misty's Wish and then play Morgan. Now, if you go first and can't attack anyway, then playing Misty's Wish to get it ready for next turn is awesome. Just cross your fingers your opponent doesn't drop something like a Judge or a Marshadow. But outside of that, you're probably not going to want to play Misty because you want to be playing Morgan. But you can't play it until you got the other 3 Battle Chatelaine ladies in hand, so yeah, sorry about that. You kind of got to get them all in hand. And that's basically it. You're trying to get Morgan off, Tapu Lele and Misty will help you greatly, and then Chip Chip Ice Axe kind of hurts your opponent. Now, there is one other Pokemon we're playing here, and that is Tapu Lele. The one from Ultra Prism. Basically, it lets you move damage around your opponent's side of the board. This is for if you have a few turns where you're just hitting 150 over and over again and not getting KOs. You can bring in Tapu Lele when there's like 150 damage on 4 different Pokemon, turn it into 300 on 2 different Pokemon, or 200 on 3 different Pokemon, whatever it takes to win the game. And the energy cost really isn't going to matter, because by this point you really should have moved a couple energy over, or attached, while you're attacking with Gardevoir and Sylveon. And then in terms of trainer cards, there are a few others that we really like here. We're playing Mysterious Treasure because we really need to go and search out our Tapu Lele. It's really important because you need them to get your supporters. We're playing a single copy of Max Potion. You're moving all the energy off when you attack if you want to. So hopefully here you'll be able to play Max Potion at one point just to save a Tag Team GX KO and basically put your opponent another 2 turns away from winning. Buy yourself enough time to win if the game's going slower than you planned. Obviously we're playing a Wonder Labyrinth Prism Star here because it increases the attack cost of your opponent's attacks by 1. Unless they're fairies. Now, it will increase the attack cost of your Tapu Lele, but as you're not attacking with it, I suppose you technically could. You could pile energy onto a Tapu Lele and do giant KOs here, but if you're piling energy on, then increasing the attack cost by 1 really isn't going to matter, ladies and gentlemen. Don't worry your pretty little head about it. And we're also playing, maybe should have mentioned this earlier, but I have no regrets, a couple copies of Steven's Resolve here. Now, Steven's Resolve ends your turn. But before it ends your turn, it lets you search your deck for any free cards and put them into your hand. It's very much like Misty's Wish. Except Misty's Wish doesn't end your turn, so you can say use Misty's Wish and then use Gardevoir and Sylveon's first attack, for instance, whereas Steven's Resolve will end your turn, but it's just another way to get those free supporter cards ready for next turn. And you are playing the other Battle Chatelaine ladies, so you can use them. Dana, if your opponent's active is a stage 2, search for any 2 cards and put them into your hand. That could be useful. Nita, you can only play if your opponent's active is a basic, but you get to move an energy from your opponent's active Pokemon to the top of their deck. That's going to slow them down a little bit. And Evelyn, you can only use if your opponent's active is a stage 1, draw 4 cards. After the first Morgan, you're probably not going to need to use it again, so maybe you'll end up using these occasionally. In terms of other supporter cards, we've got a couple of Cynthia because it's fairly good draw. You're hoping not to need it. The ideal situation here is use stuff like Stevens and Misty's to get all 4 of the supporters in your hand, play Morgan and just sit there hitting 150 till you win. But it's quite nice regardless. Incidentally, Steven's Resolve will also let you search for Chip Chip Ice Act, which can be pretty important. And 1 copy of Guzma to act as both a switch and a way to drag Pokemon into the active. We've got 1 Power Plant here to turn off abilities of Pokemon, GX and EX. Great after putting your opponent down to a 0-card hand, because, well, they can't use Dedenne, Tapu Lele, etc. if you've got this in play. Which is kind of hilarious. Only playing 1, but you can search it with Steven. We got 1 Escape Rope to act as a little bit of a switch. We've got 4 copies of Ultra Ball, because you've got to get out those Tapu Lele as soon as you possibly can. Playing these and Mysterious Treasure is pretty important. And then we've got 2 copies of Pokegear 3.0. Again, this is a deck where you really want to try and get your supporters out so you can get Morgan rolling. Yeah, something like this that can search supporters, at least in a limited fashion. That's pretty good. I adore this deck. I absolutely love it. I think it's very dependent on the combo. When it fires, I think you'll win most of your games. When it doesn't, I think you'll probably lose most of your games. But let's be clear about this. It won a tournament with over 600 people. Frankly, ladies and gentlemen, it works far more often than not because it won a tournament with over 600 people. This isn't some little gimmick deck that won a 10-person store championship. Oh no, this won a huge tournament over in Japan. This deck is legit. But I'd like to know what you think about it, so please do let me know in the comment section. Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at The Wassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassyPlays, where we talk about a whole bunch of games that don't even have Pokemon in. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.